Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of First Impressions on the Scratch a Track podcast presented by the Dude and Grim Show. I am the Dude.
And I am Grim. And today we are here to give our first initial impressions of the Golden Casket by Modest Mouse.
We most certainly are, Grim. And before we get in too deep into it, we want to remind everyone to go ahead and like, subscribe, and comment below.
If you would.
Because if you don't know, this is the Dude and Grim Show. All right, Grim. So this album came out
today. Yeah.
Today. I've listened to it a couple of times. I think I would say 2.5 to 3.
Yeah, I'm
one focused listen, I would say.
Yeah, I had 2 focus listens right in a row. I had a 4-hour drive, and I just played through the whole thing twice. And I gotta say, like, initially, I was kind of not that into it, but something occurred to me when I was listening to it, probably about halfway through the first listen, is
all right.
The reason why I have this feeling is because I can't shake the thoughts of like Moon and Antarctica or the Lonesome Crowded West. Like, I have in my mind already what I think Modest Mouse should sound like.
Yep.
And I'm not giving it room to just do what they want to do. And so as I listened to the remainder of the album and then again through the second time, I really tried to take that out of it. And I'm like, all right, forget that this is Modest Mouse. Forget about all the other stuff they did. And just listen to it as if it were a band that you'd never heard the first time. And in that case, I thought it was a fairly interesting album.
Yeah, I kind of had to do something similar, and I feel like there's a part of me that I am a hypocrite.
And you're biased, and I am too.
A lot of times, because I'll give people a hard time about when the best analogy is Kid A and OK Computer, like kind of like when that album came out, it's like, oh, it wasn't OK Computer Part 2. It's like, yeah, this is not the Lonesome Crowded West Part 2. This is not Moon and Antarctica or Good News or whatever Part 2.
No, it isn't.
And so,
or even Sad Sappy Sucker Part 2.
Or even Sad Sappy Sucker, yeah. Or This Is a Long Drive with Nothing to Think About, yeah.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things where I feel like with those previous albums, they set the bar so high. And so I have a hard time mentally, kind of taking myself away from sort of that standard and that style. So trying to listen to it with fresh ears, I definitely tried to do that this time. And it is a very interesting album. I think it's a strange album. It is different, I feel like, than anything they've sort of done previously.
And for that, I got to give him credit because and even, okay, so I liked, of course, you and I can really go back to when,
the first song?
Whatchamacallit came out. Because it was Good News. It was their first major label release. We were both at a time where we had like started listening to them just, as a band. And then they released a new album and it was really cool and it was a great album, all these things. And that was different too. And then even We Were Dead Before the Ship Even Sank. I like a lot of the stuff off that album. I didn't like it as much, but I still think it's a good album. But I think the one Strangers to Ourselves, I tried listening to it and I was like, all right, I'm kind of done with this.
Yeah, that certainly wasn't my favorite. And I think it also, at that point, there had been a pretty decent gap in between albums. And I I wouldn't say forgot about them, or maybe I grew out of them, or my music taste changed. And then something new came out and I probably didn't give it the fair chance that I should have.
I was the same way. And again, I wonder if I would think the same thing given that a little more of a fair shake. However, I read an article, or started reading an article, I should say, by the AV Club about their new album. And they kind of said the same thing to what I'm feeling, where it was like this album was something a little fresher and a little different that they also did not pick up on with Strangers to Ourselves.
Yeah, and actually, I kind of listened to and flipped through Strangers to Ourselves after I listened to this one a couple of times. I really wanted to go back and see kind of how close they were, and I actually think they're very different. With this album, The Golden Casket, I really feel it feels a little more subdued. The songs do. I feel like there's not a lot in your face. Some of the songs,
but it's kind of trippy though too.
No, it is trippy. I feel like a lot of the songs are stripped down more than usual, and they're not driven by the guitar. Like that classic. There's not the where there's none of that. It's not the driving guitar. A lot of it, dude. There's a lot of synth in this.
I know, and that's what I found it was interesting. And again, at first I was kind of thinking that I was going to give it a bad or a non-favorable impression because of that. But again, I felt like with some of these other bands, I know we talked about it with like Tame Impala, like it's been hard for me to listen to anything they've done since Inner Speaker, because I have in my mind that is like their standard, but it's not fair. Right? Because people change, and granted, I will say that too. Yeah, we fear change. But the albums that they've done since Currents, to me, all sound like Currents, to be fair. But this album does not sound like the other stuff that Modest Mouse has done, and that's why I kind of approach it differently.
Yeah. Well, I listened to an interview with Isaac Brock talking about this album, and between their previous album and this album, he had 2 kids.
Dude, I was going to say that song, I want to say Laces Out, but it's not called Laces Out. It's I think
Lace Your Shoes.
Lace Your Shoes. I mean, This is obviously him like talking about his children. And there was another thing that I was thinking about in here in several songs, which culminates in the end song, Back to the Middle. There's this talk of like this idea of the middle and like kind of an intermediate thing. And dude, when you think about it, I mean, it kind of hit me as I rounded my 40th birthday. A lot of the themes in this have to do with like this middle spot in your life. You're talking about your kids. Dude, you're not going to sing about being a 20-year-old driving around in a van doing drugs, playing shows anymore.
Yeah.
And at least to do this, I still feel like the album still had edge. I mean, when you open with a song called F Your Acid Trip, I mean...
But here's the thing. It does show the maturity, because in that song, he sings about not necessarily him doing it, but him being around the people doing it. And he talks about it in the interview, him driving people around and hanging out with people who are doing it.
And he's like, I'm done with this.
He's like, and kind of being annoyed. So it is a more of a mature take on that. Whereas you're right, when he was younger,
he's doing it.
Dude, and you do feel it, especially in Lonesome Crowded West. There's more anger, there's more aggressiveness. In this one, he's not quite as cynical as he was when he was younger. In his words, and if he is it's in a different way. It's from a different standpoint, and I imagine a lot of that has to do with getting older and fatherhood.
I agree, but at the same point, still an edge to your music, and still, I think, very interesting lyrics. One of them that stood out, and I think it's in Transmitting and Receiving maybe, but I like how he kind of just says all these different things and makes them rhyme, just like all these different stimulus of life that he's just like barfing out in the background of the lyrics. But the main lyric that really got to me was he said, "I don't like my TV watching me." And think about it, dude, with like Alexa and all these devices, Google Home or whatever, like they're listening to you. They're listening to what you say. You know what I mean?
Listening to you.
So there is still, I think, some cynicism in things with stuff like that, with like I don't want to say distrust, but kind of like the maybe not being so sure on like what tech is doing.
Yeah. Well, I think there definitely is that. I just think he's not as aggressive or pissed off about
sure,
it as he was when he was younger.
There is certainly not the vocal delivery of Convenient Parking, for example.
No, there's not. But so some of the songs on here, there's again, they use this. I feel like the synth a lot through some of these songs instead of that the sort of the standard driving guitar sound that we're so used to hearing. And part of me started thinking they almost sound like, and I don't mean this, I guess, in a negative way, but some of the songs as I was listening to it almost sound like almost like nursery rhymes or like a kid's album a little bit.
Dude,
for adults, right?
Especially, I think The Sun Hasn't Left, because that almost has like something that sounded, and it may be a sampler or whatever, but it sounded as if it were like a marimba or a xylophone. And you're right. I felt like the same thing, like some sort of a melody that could have been a nursery rhyme, but then it goes somewhere else.
Well, so he did say one thing, and I've never heard of this instrument, or maybe he just said it wrong, or I heard it wrong. But the kalimbas, is that an instrument?
The what?
Or is he saying kalimbas?
Oh yeah, that is.
Yeah, okay.
Because I think the kalimba is some sort of like small piano type instrument, and I believe it's from Africa. But I'm going to look that up.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a thumb piano. Yeah, I was okay. Thumb piano. And I believe that is an African instrument.
So initially when recording or getting the idea to record this, he met with Dave Sardy, who helped produce the album. And they met and just kind of hung out and were like fooling around with stuff. And they're like, oh, okay, let's do this. And then the pandemic happened. And,
interesting.
And then they had to like take a little break. And then I think Isaac Brock said after a few months, he kind of got stir crazy and was like, screw it, I'm going to go down to wherever he is. He's like, I just want to play the kalimbas and modular synths. And
I think he did.
And he even said like kind of without guitar. But then he said they didn't, he was like, he kind of made a joke. He was like, but we didn't really get too far. But I feel like they did. I feel like this is the least guitar I've ever heard on a Modest Mouse album. At least it's not the featured instrument, that's for sure.
Yeah, it just, to me, the whole thing was just a little more exploratory. And again, I guess when I took it out of the pretense of this is what I think Modest Mouse sounds like and just listened to it for what it was, I was able to hear it in a different way, which dude, I don't think I would have ever done that if it wasn't for this show, and probably for the first impressions, because I'm okay to say there's something I don't like, but I feel like it's allowed me to open up more to things that maybe I would have initially just poo-pooed because it wasn't what I think so-and-so should be. But far be it for me to say that, like, they're making the music.
Exactly. I mean, you have a BMW SUV and you like driving it. Although you don't.
Oh, my wife does.
Your wife does. Yeah. But there are, I did notice kind of towards the end, some songs that are a little harder. It picks up a little bit, and especially the last song I noticed, Back to the Middle, that definitely has some fuzz and some guitar on it and everything. And again, it has one thing they're also really known for, and I felt like they didn't do this on as many songs, is they're really good at, and especially in Lonesome Crowded West.
The vocals like back here.
Well, yeah, there is one song, I made a note of it, where he did do it, but they're able to really raise and lower tempos into transitions. Like they can be rocking out, and then all of a sudden they can just kind of chill out a little bit, and then they can start, pick it back up and rock it out again, kind of like doing the Cockroach in songs. Like that. So I thought like in Back to the Middle they did that a little bit. I'm trying to think. There was another song I was looking at, but it's escaping me right now. But they do have sort of their signature thing. So I would say to fans who maybe haven't listened to Modest Mouse for a while and like the earlier stuff, this is going to be different than anything you've heard them do before. It is more exploratory and out there, but I definitely
go into
think
it with an open
it's
mind.
worth a listen.
I think you should.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. don't expect it to be the stuff that they were doing and writing when they were, in high school and stuff, or just out of high school. Like I just wouldn't do that. Now, Grim, did you have any songs? Was there a song that stood out to you that you did like?
Well, I mean, I like Transmitting and Receiving for what they did with the vocal stuff. I like to leave a light on, and then Back to the Middle. I mean, I can't say there was a whole lot I didn't really care for. I guess if, and again, it's not. I'm not trying to say that I heard this and I was like, this is the greatest album that's ever been made, but. Similar to what I said about Butterfly 3000, although maybe there weren't things where I was like, oh my gosh, and I immediately latched onto it with like fervor. I had no problem letting the album play and listening to the whole thing again because I thought that there were interesting things that I wanted to check out, and once I could get my head in a space where you allow the artist to do what they do, and that is whatever they want to do. I think I was able to go into it with a more open mind and form a more reasonable opinion, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely like this and appreciated this more than the previous album. And
Me too.
Even had an EP that was previous to that. And that just those didn't do it for me, but maybe I do need to go back and revisit those sort of more with this kind of open mind, and maybe I'll find something that really clicks this time.
I know that's the hard thing, isn't it? Because think about if you listen to every Bowie album and you're like, well, this should sound like Space Oddity or Ziggy Stardust, you would be like, this guy's terrible. Or you know what I mean? You just
absolutely,
it's hard,
when somebody reinvents
and
themselves.
If you thought, well, no, the Beatles can't do Sgt. Pepper's, they have to do like another iteration of Help.
Yeah, we would definitely be not as advanced in the music world.
You know what they said? The great ones all leave their mark.
They do. They do. Just like us.
It's WETB.
Exactly. Oh, the Wet Bandits. Wet Bandits. Well, Grim, I think that kind of wraps up everything I wanted to cover on this. I mean, overall, I think it's definitely worth a couple listens. I'm certainly feel better about this than again some of their previous stuff. Did it blow me away? Absolutely not.
No, but
I appreciated it.
Yeah, and some of the songs caught me, like I said, I guess just because of my my recent birthday and the age I'm at, and some of the subject matter, like, just kind of caught me at the right moment, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's all downhill from here, basically. So.
Oh, dude, yeah, playing the back nine now. Whew.
Yeah. Oh shit. All right. Well, hey, it would be awesome for all you Modest Mouse fans out there to one, give us a like, subscribe, and comment below. Let us know what you think about this album. How does it compare to maybe not their early stuff, but the last few albums that came out? Do you like the direction they're heading? Because this definitely does.
Can you give it a real fair shake?
Departure.
Can you give it a shake? Yeah.
Because we want to know. We want to know. All right, Graham.
All right. Out. I think so. Right. Time to go.
It's time to go on the Dude.
Scratch a Track is produced by the Dude and Grim. Additional music provided by More. That's ... MORE and the Tims TIMNZ. Copyright 2020. The Dude and Grim Show.